This is Mepo and the Princess in the Storm, dedicated to my wife. Long ago, in the age when strange roads led to stranger fortunes, a young boy named Mepo walked along a lonely path between dark forests and distant hills. That afternoon, the sky had grown heavy and grey, and the wind began to stir uneasily among the trees. Before long, rain stormed down in great sheets, drumming upon the earth and turning the road into deep mud. Mepo drew his cloak tightly about him and continued on his way, hoping to find shelter before nightfall. As lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the road, he noticed a figure sitting huddled beside it. It was a young woman. Her clothes were soaked through with rain and smeared with mud. Her dripping long hair clung to her face. She looked weary and forlorn. Mepo approached her. "Are you hurt?" he asked. The young woman shook her head. "No," she said, "but I have been traveling for many days, and this storm has made my journey more difficult." "Well," Mepo said, "the road is indeed dangerous today. I will walk with you until we find shelter." The young woman smiled. "There is a castle not far from here," she said. "I believe the king and queen there will give me shelter, as I am a princess." Mepo glanced at her mud-covered cloak and rain-tangled hair. A princess? It seems unlikely, he thought. Yet the rain fell harder, and the evening shadows were already gathering, leaving him no choice but to follow the young woman, princess or not. So off they went, along the muddy road and in the castle's direction. At last, they saw tall, grand towers rising against the dark sky. Warm, golden rays of light shone through their high windows. The young woman straightened and glided toward the gates with confidence. "That is where we must go." Mepo hesitated. "Perhaps we might find an inn instead," he suggested. "If we knock upon the gates of a king in the middle of a stormy night and claim that you are royalty, the guards may not appreciate it." But the young woman stepped forward with aplomb and knocked firmly upon the gate's great wooden doors. After a moment, the doors opened, revealing several guards with lanterns and the queen herself. The queen's sharp eyes studied the two travelers standing in the rain. "And who are you?" she asked. The young woman stepped forward gracefully. "I am a princess traveling far from my homeland," she said. "This storm caught me upon the road, and I seek shelter just for the night." Then the queen turned and gestured questioningly toward Mepo. "This boy is my traveling companion," responded the soaked, muddy young woman. "He walked beside me faithfully so that I would not face the road alone." Mepo bowed somewhat awkwardly before the queen. At that moment, another figure stepped into the hall behind. It was the prince. He was tall and handsome. When he saw the young woman standing there, soaked, muddy, yet still graceful and fair, he paused in awe. The young princess noticed him as well, and for a moment neither spoke. The queen saw everything. She liked the calm confidence with which the young woman had spoken. There was something in her voice and bearing that suggested dignity. Yet a queen must always be certain. At last she stepped aside. "Come inside," she said. Servants quickly hurried forward to bring warm towels and dry clothes. Mepo sat gratefully by the great fireplace as the warmth slowly chased the cold from his bones. "Please join us for dinner after you have washed and dried up," the queen commanded. Mepo and the princess accepted graciously. dressed in warm, dry, extravagant silks brought before them by the royal servants, Mepo and the princess arrived at the grand hall. They were ushered to a table that seemed almost a mile long. Dining under decadent candelabras, Mepo and the princess were greeted with rows upon rows of sumptuous meats, delicious exotic fruits, ripe vegetables, and decadent desserts. The crowned and bejeweled king, who sat gloriously at the head of the table, boomed in a jolly voice, "Welcome, my dear guests. Please help yourselves to some dinner." As Mepo piled his plate with a tower of the delicious food and tore through the meats, the princess daintily cut her food into bite-sized bits, chewing slowly and savoring each tiny bite with care. The queen watched the princess approvingly, as the prince glanced admiringly. "So, young lady," the king began conversing, "tell us about the kingdom where you hail from." "Of course, your majesty," responded the princess in a beautiful, almost musical voice. She began regaling the entire table with stories of her kingdom, its unusually beautiful sights, the glory of the knights and its subjects. The king and queen listened intently, as the prince listened in awe. The prince had met many fair maidens and princesses, but none as erudite, eloquent, passionate, and adventurous as the young woman who sat at the royal dinner table that night. Her eyes glistened as she narrated her tales, and her skin glowed under the candlelight. When the queen noticed the beautiful young woman grow weary and suppress a yawn after supper, she interjected, "You must be so tired after journeying for so long. I will have the servants prepare your bedchambers." "Thank you, your majesty," chimed the princess and Mepo. The queen whispered her orders to the lady-in-waiting, who left immediately to oversee preparations for the guests. As the servants scurried down the grand hallways to prepare the guests' rooms for the night, Mepo noticed a most peculiar sight. Servants began carrying mattresses into one of the guest chambers. First one mattress, then another still. Mepo watched with curiosity as the pile grew higher and higher. At last, 20 mattresses and 20 soft feather beds were stacked upon the bed frame. When the servants had finished, the queen quietly stuffed something small between the bottom mattress and the bed frame. Mepo did not see what it was and thought little of the matter. Soon afterward, the queen returned to the young woman, who was elegantly sitting by the fireplace. "Your bedchamber is ready," she said kindly. "Please follow my lady-in-waiting. She will escort you to your room." The beautiful young woman obediently followed the queen's lady-in-waiting to what would be her bedroom for the night. When she saw how regal her room was, and how tall and majestic the bed itself was, she thanked her host profusely and proceeded to climb up a ladder and into bed. She was looking forward to a good night's rest, and the tower of plush mattresses before her looked reassuringly comfortable and cozy. Mepo slept in a small chamber nearby, though he wondered a little about the strange mountain of bedding. Outside, the storm raged through the night. When morning came, the rain had passed, and bright sunlight filled the castle halls. At breakfast, the queen turned to the young woman. "Did you sleep well?" she inquired. The young woman blushed, embarrassed by the queen's question. She ought to have slept well, but instead she spent the night tossing and turning. The bed was warm, and her robes were made of silk, but she couldn't quite put her finger on why it was that she spent most of the night staying up. She felt rather tired this morning. The queen saw the beautiful young girl hesitate and spoke encouragingly. "Speak your truth, child. There is no shame in that." "Your Majesty, I'd first like to thank you for your kindness and hospitality. Last night's dinner was exquisite. My bedchamber was incredibly lavishly designed, but to be honest," she replied, "I did not sleep well at all. I found myself tossing and turning, almost as if there was a lump beneath the small of my back." Mepo raised an eyebrow in surprise, wondering how she could have felt that way with so many mattresses. But the young woman continued, "I felt almost certain that there was something untoward beneath my bed. Something small, perhaps? I do apologize, but the sensation made it incredibly difficult to sleep." Mepo listened in awe. The queen smiled quietly. She signaled to the servants. They began removing the mattresses one by one. 20 mattresses, 20 feather beds. At last, they lifted the final mattress, and there upon the bed frame lay a single, small pea. The queen held it up. "You are quite right, my dear. A princess," she declared, "is raised in such comfort and refinement that even the smallest discomfort will trouble her rest." She turned toward the prince. And only one truly raised in royal comfort could feel something so small beneath so many beds. The prince smiled warmly at the young woman. The young woman smiled back. Mepo stared in amazement at the tiny pea, knowing full well that something so small would not have troubled him at all. For many miles, he had walked beside her, believing she was merely a traveler with an unlikely tale. Yet the truth had been walking beside him the entire time. In the days that followed, the prince and princess walked often in the palace gardens, engaging deeply in delightful conversations. Soon, it became clear that they had grown very fond of one another. When the prince kneeled, asking the princess to marry him, Mepo remained to partake in the celebrations. There was music and dancing, laughter and feasting that lasted for days and far into the night. When the festivities ended, Mepo bid the happy couple farewell and gathered his belongings to continue his journey. "I am glad you walked beside me that night," the princess said earnestly. Mepo smiled. "I admit," he replied, "I found it hard to believe that you truly were a princess." The princess laughed softly. "Sometimes," she said, "the truth arrives looking like a traveler caught in the rain." Mepo nodded thoughtfully, realizing that sometimes the smallest thing in the world could reveal the truth hidden beneath many layers. He slung his pack over his shoulder and stepped once more upon the road.